You know the feeling. You wave back at someone and realize they were waving at the person behind you. You trip on a flat sidewalk. You call a teacher mom. And for a moment, your whole body floods with heat, certain that everyone saw, everyone noticed, everyone will remember. This video is about that feeling. It is about why your brain treats a tiny, harmless slip like a genuine emergency and where that ancient alarm actually comes from. So let's start with how wrong that feeling actually is. In 2000, a scientist named Thomas Gilovich ran a now-famous experiment at Cornell. He made students put on a deeply embarrassing t-shirt, one with a large photo of the singer Barry Manilow on it, and walk into a room full of other students. Then he asked the wearer to guess how many people had noticed the shirt. They guessed about 46%. Nearly half the room, they were sure, had clocked it. But then he asked the other students what they had actually noticed. The real number was around 23%, barely half of what the wearer feared. Gilovich called this the spotlight effect. You feel a bright light pointed at your mistake, but the people around you are living inside their own heads, barely watching you at all. And there was a telling detail. When wearers were given 15 minutes to get used to the embarrassing shirt first, their guesses dropped sharply. The shirt had not changed. Only their own panic had cooled. The spotlight, it turned out, was mostly powered from the inside. Which means the audience in your mind is far bigger than the real one, and it gets stranger. A follow-up study by the same lab found we do not only overestimate what people see, we also overestimate how much they can read what we feel inside. They called it the illusion of transparency. You feel your panic is written across your face. It rarely is, so you feel exposed twice over. Once for what you did, once for what you think everyone can sense, and both times, the fear is inflated. But if the fear is so exaggerated, why does it feel so physically real? To answer that, we have to look at what social rejection does inside the brain. In 2003, a researcher named Naomi Eisenberger had people play a simple ball-tossing game in a brain scanner, then quietly had the other players stop including them. When that happened, a region called the anterior cingulate cortex lit up. It is part of the same system that registers physical pain, which means being left out is not just an idea that makes you sad. Your brain processes it using some of the same machinery as a physical injury. Later research by a scientist named Kip Williams showed how fast and how deep this goes. Even a few seconds of being excluded, even by strangers you will never see again, is enough to bruise your sense of belonging. The alarm does not wait to check whether the threat is real, and it does not stop at what people see. A related study found we also badly overestimate how visible our inner panic is. Researchers called it the illusion of transparency. You feel certain that everyone can see your heart pounding, your face burning, your voice shaking, but they mostly cannot. What feels like a blazing signal on the outside is, to everyone else, a barely noticeable flicker. Your worst feelings are far more private than they seem in the moment. So why would we come with an alarm this sensitive? Because it is doing a job. In 1995, a researcher named Mark Leary proposed a beautiful idea he called the sociometer. He argued that your self-esteem is not really about you at all. It is a gauge. It quietly measures one thing, how accepted you are by the people around you. When you feel that gauge drop after an awkward moment, that sinking feeling is the needle moving. It is not vanity, it is a warning light. Your mind is telling you that your standing in the group might be slipping, and in Leary's studies, the more people felt excluded, the harder that needle fell. The gauge was doing exactly its job. But to see why that warning matters so much, we have to go back to the world it was built for. In 1992, a scientist named Robin Dunbar compared brain size across primates and estimated the number of stable relationships a human mind is built to track. The famous figure is around 150. We should hold it loosely, because real groups ranged from small camps of 30 to larger tribes of many hundreds. But the core point holds. Your social brain was designed for a small, repeating world where you saw the same faces your entire life, which changes everything about a mistake. In that world, there were no strangers to disappear into. If you embarrassed yourself, the witnesses were not random people you would never meet again. They were your neighbors, your family, your food supply, your protection, and they would be for the rest of your life. Your reputation was not just an idea in your head, it was survival equipment. And that reputation was built and broken in a very specific place. In 2014, a researcher named Polly Wiesner recorded the conversations of the Juhonsi people, who still live much as our ancestors did. She found that daytime talk was practical, full of complaints and plans. But at night, around the fire, more than 8 in 10 conversations became stories. Tales of who did what, who could be trusted, who had shamed themselves, and who had shown courage. The fire was where reputations were made and remembered. Which means your slip-ups were not forgotten by morning. They could become the story told around the fire, passed along, remembered. In a world that small, your standing in those stories shaped how people treated you for years. So a brain that felt sharp, physical dread at the thought of looking foolish was not being fragile. It was protecting something that genuinely mattered. But did a bad reputation actually carry real danger? In part, yes. A scientist named Christopher Boehm studied how small human societies handle people who break the rules. He found that these groups actively police behavior, using ridicule, criticism, and social pressure to keep individuals in line, and in the most extreme cases, pushing out those who repeatedly threatened the group. We should be careful here. This was mostly aimed at bullies and serious norm breakers, not at someone who tripped over their own feet. But it reveals the deep truth. In our ancestral world, the group's judgment had teeth. So put it all together. You inherited a brain that treats social standing as a life or death resource, because for your ancestors, it genuinely was. That brain came with a hair trigger alarm for looking foolish, tuned for a village of 150 people who would remember everything. But here is the glitch. That ancient alarm is now running in a completely different world. You do not live in a village of 150 familiar faces. You move through cities of strangers, past hundreds of people every day who will never think of you again. Yet your brain still treats each of them like a member of the village jury, like someone whose opinion will follow you for life. So think about the numbers. On a busy street, in a store, on a train, you can pass hundreds of people in a single day. Your ancestors might have met that many in years. And your brain did not get the update. So the cashier who saw you fumble your card, the people on the train who heard your voice crack, the stranger you waved at by mistake, it files them all as if they were permanent neighbors, running the old village algorithm in a world of strangers. And so a moment that will be genuinely forgotten in seconds gets treated like a lasting stain on a reputation that, in this crowd, barely exists. So the next time your whole body floods with that familiar heat over some tiny, harmless slip, it might help to remember what is really happening. You are not weak, and you are not uniquely awkward. You are running ancient survival software, built for a small world where everyone remembered you, inside a modern world where almost no one is even watching. The spotlight you feel is real. It is just pointing at a stage that emptied a long time ago. The village that would have remembered your stumble is gone. The strangers around you today have already forgotten it, if they ever noticed at all. They have their own moments to worry about. The only person still holding on to yours, replaying it, wincing at it, is you. And once you truly see that, the heat starts to lose its grip. The alarm can still fire. You just no longer have to believe everything it screams.